Hey everyone, welcome back to HBTA. I'm Tamir,
I'm Jesse Kaminskas.
I'm Cole Young.
and today we're going to be doing for the first time, we're going to be talking about draft grades for NFL teams. Today we're going to be doing the Houston Texans. And yeah, definitely a very interesting draft, definitely
one of the better ones.
Yeah, one where they kind of really needed to make a statement, I believe, They've been really bad for a lot of years, so definitely kind of you needed to turn
When
around
was the
this
last
year.
time they made the playoffs? 2018?
I don't even know,
Diop
bro.
and
When they had Deshaun Watson, yeah. All right, do you want me to talk about it? All right.
Yeah, go for
So,
it. Actually, it was
so after a lot of speculation that they would pass on a quarterback, right? They take C.J. Stroud with their second pick, and I am a really big C.J. Stroud fan. I think he's the most pro-ready quarterback in the NFL draft. I think the most impressive part about his game is, what he does with his tools. Not his a lot of people talk about his accuracy, but I find that he is a very, crisp and, compact throwing motion. He's very balanced and stable. He can throw far. He can throw short when you want to. I think, a really underrated aspect of his game is his long ball. And he does a good job of, generating power from the ground up and doesn't have to overthrow to get like a lot of velocity and distance. But he's not a big guy, but he's 6'3", pretty solid frame.
Yeah,
but,
he is good size for an NFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, I know this is kind of a hot take, but compared to like Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, I think he's the most pro ready, and I think he's the highest floor.
So is he your number one quarterback?
Yeah, he was my number one.
He wasn't my number one. I'd say he was the number one best available after Bryce Young. Like, in my opinion, I think they should have taken him over Anthony Richardson, the Texans, because
I'm a big Anthony Richardson.
I know,
I am too.
I know he's so good. You see him in the combine, his crazy athleticism. But to be fair, we could talk about it more when we do the Colts. But he did only start 13 games, was 6-7 in those games, so he doesn't have the most experience. And I feel like if you're the Texans and you miss on a guy like Anthony Richardson, then you're kind of back to square one. And I feel like the rest of the picks in the draft almost don't matter.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Stroud is a safer pick.
Yeah, I agree with them taking Stroud here, especially after Bryce Young was taken. I think Stroud. I think they had to pick Stroud.
If I was them, I would have taken Anthony Richardson for a couple reasons. I just think that he it's one of those players that you don't want to miss, man. It's just like, I know there's risk there, but if you go back in 5 years, I think they're gonna be, damn, we should have taken Anthony Richardson.
That definitely could happen.
But I do like Stroud. I think my favorite part of his game is I think he makes tight passes in the red zone a lot.
Yeah, no, he's really good.
Like that part I really like about his game.
He can do everything.
He has a good pocket presence, I think.
Yeah.
His accuracy in the middle of the field is also definitely one of the higher quarterbacks in the draft.
Yeah.
And hopefully one of the higher ones in the NFL when he comes in. I also like how he gets the elevation on his throws.
Yeah, exactly.
He kind of just puts it where
he doesn't need to chuck it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not. Yeah, some of the quarterbacks you see, like, they're just sending line drives at you no matter what.
He can get that.
He gets it up.
He's really smooth and crisp.
Yeah. What were you gonna say? I'll say. No, definitely. You could argue, was it the best quarterback to take? I think even if it wasn't, I think still taking a quarterback here was super important. Looking back at the Texans.
I think it was definitely the right pick.
Yeah, looking back at the Texans last year, they ranked 31st in QBR. They ranked 21st in passing touchdowns, 28th in yards per pass, and 31st in interceptions thrown by a QB. So I think definitely looking at those stats, obviously stats.
They knew those stats coming into the draft.
Yeah.
You could tell by how they drafted. They took a couple receivers. They took a bunch of versatile O-linemen. They obviously took Stroud. They knew coming in they needed edge rushers, they needed O-line, they needed wide receiver, they needed quarterback.
Exactly.
And they definitely got all those things. So
definitely the right play, I think, in my opinion, taking a QB.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
There are a couple things I don't like about Stroud's game that could potentially not be the best, especially because I don't think that the Houston's
Houston's what?
I don't think Houston's ability to develop a quarterback is really there, and a couple of things that I see Stroud does I don't love. Like, I think that he tends to force it to his first read. I feel like you kind of see that a lot. And he wasn't really punished in college because of this, because he had such elite receivers.
Yeah, he had crazy receivers. That's the one thing. That's his
another weakness is he probably had better receivers in college than he will have.
Honestly, I agree.
See that.
All those guys were so talented. I don't think he's very good under pressure, which is another reason I kind of would have rather seen them taking Anthony Richardson, because he can get out of pressure better with his athleticism. C.J. Stroud is not a bad runner. I mean, we saw that in the Georgia game where he finally exploded, but he's hesitant to do it, and he hasn't really shown us much of it. And especially at the NFL level, when you got Miles Garrett, any of these guys like coming at you, you need to be able to get out under pressure.
Yep.
But I mean, if we're talking about development, you think they'd be better developing a guy like, because I feel like Richardson, yes, obviously he has that insane athleticism and that gives him more upside, but I feel like he would also need a lot more development.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I really think, to me, I have Bryce Young as number 1. I have Richardson and Stroud. Okay. Richardson 2A, Stroud 2B.
Yeah, honestly, they are. Yeah,
but I just think like a guy like that, you do want to take a risk on, and if you then can get people that can develop a quarterback. You know, like that. You just need to work on that. But that is true. I see where you're coming from with that.
So should I talk about the next? All right, I'll start.
Yeah. Let's go.
So the Texans obviously shocked
round
everyone.
1, pick 3. They traded up for.
They shocked everyone when they moved up to 3. Obviously, Will Anderson is just he's a beast, right? He's a fantastic player, but they gave up a lot. They gave up a lot. They gave up their number 12 and number 33 selections in 2023, plus a 2024 first rounder and a 2024 third rounder for the right to take Will Anderson Jr. at 3. I mean, do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, to me,
I love Will Anderson.
Yeah, but I think it's still a little bit iffy how much they gave up.
I think that everyone thought. I mean, a lot of people thought that the Texans were coming in. They thought they should take a quarterback, but that they were going to take Will Anderson with the 2nd pick.
Right.
And the fact that they were able to come out with arguably the second best quarterback in the draft, and then probably the best defensive player in the draft, besides maybe Jalen Carter. I don't know your feelings on that, but
I think he's better than Jalen Carter. I
think this was a great pick. I don't even care how much they traded up for it. They need edge. They need an edge. They haven't had a good edge since J.J. Watt.
Right.
So I think my favorite parts about his game is he plays half a man very well.
Yeah.
So he's able to not he can get on the one side of the man very well.
He's a flexible
athlete,
him.
Yeah, he's very athletically gifted. He's flexible. He's explosive. He's strong for his size.
Yeah.
He's Another thing is he's a very good run defender, which I feel like you don't really expect, but especially because Saban had him a lot in a 4-eye, which I don't see them doing that in the NFL. I think he's more of an outside guy, like a 7, a 9. But so when he was playing on the outside, he was a good run defender. He set the edge really well. He came vertically across the line when the runs were away from him so that he could chase him down.
Right, he's good on outside runs, like outside speed runs,
He has really good hands,
really
I think.
Fast.
I think he can develop a little bit more of a pass rush bag, and he also does false step occasionally, which are two, I'd say not his best parts of his game, but I mean, with some NFL coaching and just more experience, I think he's just going to be a monster.
And I will say, I'm not usually a fan of trading a first and more for a non-QB, especially, I think, as a defensive player, I think that is a lot. But at the same time, looking at the Texans, I think they kind of because they're in the rebuilding stage, they have so many picks that I think, they have the 2024 Browns first round as well. So losing that pick next year of their own isn't that big of a deal because, they have so much draft capital for the future that they can still, I feel like they could afford to make that trade. And especially when it gives you an edge like this for the future when you need that position so much, your defense, like you're right, they ranked 27th in points allowed, and they ranked 30th in total points allowed, and something that I thought was crazy.
And they were in the bottom half of pass rush last season.
They ranked 6th in most rushing yards in NFL history. They gave up the 6th most rushing yards last year in NFL history, which I thought was crazy. But
Will Anderson can definitely help with that. I mean, this is just a guy he's gonna do everything for them on the defensive line.
So I think
it's a great pick. I think
they gave up a lot, but I think at the end of the day, when we look back at it, I think, in my opinion, I think we'd say it'll be worth it.
Yeah, I think Texans fans will remember this pick in a very good light, not the fact that they gave up as many picks as they did.
Yeah, exactly.
So next we get on to their second round pick. Just the 31st pick in the second round. Juice Scruggs, the center out of Penn State.
That much.
Yeah, this was definitely a reach in my eyes. I thought he was going to go 3rd, 4th round.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But he's still a pretty solid player. I really like how he's versatile because the Texans really need inside offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen. Scruggs is definitely a better center to me, but he can play guard. He's a strong punch when he gets his hands on the defensive lineman. He shows a lot of flashes of being a good offensive lineman, especially a good run blocker. But I definitely think this was a little early of a pick for
I
them.
think he needs a lot more development. I think he's really scheme dependent, honestly. I think his drive and his toughness are kind of unquestioned. He's a big guy. But I feel like they could have gone a lot better with Ohio State's Luke Weipler. who actually fell to the Browns. I think he would have been a lot better pick if they wanted a center than Juice Scruggs.
Yeah.
He's very agile. He has really good balance. He's a solid frame, and I just think he's a lot more pro-ready than Juice Scruggs. I think they took a little bit too far.
Yeah, Scruggs is also not a very athletic guy. He's also, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he's not really like a mauling guy. Like he's not really getting much pushback on his his driving blocks, but he does use his body well to stay in front of defenders, which is, I guess, how you substitute that. But in the NFL level, I don't know how that's going to translate.
And like kind of similar to what Cole said, another center that I personally thought could have went as well, John Michael Schmitz. He ended up going to the Giants.
Both him and
later in the second round.
The Ohio State guy, I think, would have been better.
Yeah,
picks.
like for example, in combine rankings, Schmitz was second of all centers, and Scruggs was 8th.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. I don't know. Definitely, I think there are better centers available, especially because I thought it was interesting because the Texans actually ended up trading into the second round to make that pick.
They did trade up for this pick.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy.
So clearly, if they traded up to take him when there were other centers available, they clearly see something they really liked in him.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something.
I mean, he's definitely not a bad player. I just think it was early, and there were other guys they could have taken that probably would have been better. But I do like how versatile he is, which like I said before.
And I think they definitely did need interior offensive line.
Yeah, especially with Stroud coming up, and I don't think Stroud's the best against pressure. Fixing that issue of needing interior offensive linemen was definitely a good idea. So.
All
right. Should we go to the next pick?
Yeah.
All right. So, their next pick was Nathaniel Dell out of Houston. He's a very solid slot receiver. You know.
Yeah.
They kind of, I think, their purpose of this, but they wanted another weapon for Stroud. Of course, he recorded 928 receiving yards out of the slot in 2022, which is 10th in the nation. And he also had an interesting stat: 19 missed tackles, which is a top 25 mark. He's good, even though he's undersized. You know, he's quick and he's good at making people miss.
Yeah, only 5'8", 165.
Good. Dell's really good at creating separation. And he's really quick. He's extremely difficult to mirror in coverage. And I think this is a very solid pick, like another dynamic weapon for Stroud.
Yeah, I think definitely want to build on the weapons out in Houston. I think Dell definitely has concerns with his size. I think that's the only thing that made him a third-round pick as opposed to first and second. When he produces like he did, he led the NCAA in receiving yards and in touchdowns. Yeah. But still, he's a great route runner. He's twitchy, which I really like coming out of receivers.
Exactly.
I think his release package is really good, which he's definitely going to need for his size. But yeah, he's an explosive player. Right. They need wide receivers.
I think he'll be solid. I think
it was a good pick in the third round.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but Stroud, himself, like him and Dell were talking after the combine, and they said they really clicked with each other. Stroud said he really liked the way Dell ran his routes, and they ended up texting with each other, got each other's numbers, and even during the draft, after the Texans took Stroud actually asked them to take Tank Dell, and they did, and like Stroud was quoted to say like, "I promised you, like I made it happen."
No, he's
so clearly,
another thing
that is a good link for the future.
I think is kind of an underrated aspect of Tank Dell's game, especially at his size, is that he's a really good red zone receiver. Like you normally expect those guys that jump up one-on-one and go grab it, being the best red zone guys, but he's, like we said, so twitchy. He really does well in the red zone. I think that can help the Texans a lot. So.
All right. All right. Let's talk about Dylan Horton. I know you like this guy a lot, Jesse. No, it's recording. I know you like Dylan Horton a lot.
I do.
They actually traded down to take him. And I think it's really good that Horton can develop alongside Will Anderson. I think that's a really big benefit. He's a safety convert, so he used to be a safety, and he added like a bunch of weight while maintaining his insane athleticism. Jesse, do you want to?
Yeah, I think you see with him, he has really good size. He has a really good first step, which shows his explosion. I mean, also, what he had? He had in the mid-30s for his vert and a 10-foot broad jump, which for a guy his size is really impressive. Yeah. I think he has really powerful hands, and he hand fights really well, which is important on the D-line.
Yeah.
I like his inside step a lot because a lot of O-linemen overstep, and his ability to come back inside, and he had at least a couple sacks in that. I mean, this past season like that, just beating the defender across his face back inside. The only concerns I have with him the big thing for me for D lineman is you need to have good bend and good hips, and he doesn't necessarily have the best of those two things.
I know, especially after like transitioning from a safety.
Yeah, it does make sense, and it can be developed, but those are definitely too, like when you look at the top pass rushers, I mean, like Nick Bosa, obviously those type of guys, their bend and their hips are phenomenal.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is to get to that elite or really good level of pass rusher. I think you kind of do need those things.
Yeah.
But I still think he can be a really solid guy. He can be developed. And yeah, I like this pick a lot. I thought it was it helps again with their pass rush and their defense. So
I was saying I do want to say I mean he definitely like is pretty explosive and powerful, but I also noticed he does look quite stiff sometimes, and he may not be the best pass rusher right now, but I feel like right now he can definitely make an impact in defending the run, which is something that they need right now, looking at the recent history with them. So I mean definitely just a really good defensive player. I think he was good for their scheme as well, and it's just always good to add to that line. Struggled.
Yeah, I think it was a really good pick.
All right, so their next pick in round 5 was Henry. I don't know how to pronounce.
Is it
Toto?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'll just say Toto.
No
'cause
disrespect.
Because of the accent.
Yeah.
Henry
Call him
Toto.
Henry.
Henry. Yeah. So Henry. Let's talk about Henry. He's a very downhill, physical kind of linebacker, and he has a lot of big game experience. He was a starter at both Tennessee and Alabama, both very prestigious SEC teams. So he has a lot of big game experience. Also, I mean, you always have to kind of like players that are coming out of Nick Saban's schemes.
Yeah, defensively. Yeah.
He's kind of a lot like Noah Sewell. Toto brings he's a really good run defense, but he's not the best in pass coverage. But he's very very physical, and he isn't afraid of anyone. He'll bring like solid, on-field strength and value to the Texans team that's trying to change its culture,
Yeah, I think he's definitely a smart player. I mean, playing in a Nick Saban defense, you have to be.
Yeah.
He's a really good open field tackler. Specifically, I mean, more so in between the tackles, like just filling the gap and wrapping up and tackling. I think he does a really good job at that. He definitely will struggle playing any type of man coverage in the NFL. I think I don't think he really has the athleticism for it. That's probably his biggest knock in my eyes. I mean, obviously, I think he's a good tackler and he's a smart player. But as a linebacker, especially in the NFL, you got inside linebackers now that are 230 running 4.4s.
Yeah.
That'll definitely be the aspect where he struggles at if he is asked to go on man coverage or like pursuing from the backside, that type of stuff.
Yeah, he kind of lacks pass coverage.
Yeah, I mean, he does a lot of things right though, and he to get him in the 5th round, I think was a really good pick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, he does have, in my opinion, poor change of direction, but he does have good energy and range. And I also want to add that it's always good to get a second player from Bama to add to your defense. Him and Will Anderson. So it's always good to see that chemistry. Maybe they could bond together, and maybe that could be a good help for the defense.
I also think it's a good fit for the Texans because they have the two guys on the 1-year deals. They have Perriman and Littleton. They're both they're inside linebackers right now.
Yeah.
They're both on 1-year deals, so maybe he gets to have more of a special teams role this season. Get to know the.
And next year if he's developed.
Yeah, exactly. And then if one of these guys leaves, he could probably come take over. So I think it was a really good pick.
All right. Their next pick. This was actually my sleeper out of all their picks. Jarrett Patterson.
Yeah.
Out of Notre Dame.
Center out of Notre Dame.
And he can kind of play any. He's been a stalwart in Notre Dame's offensive line over the past 4 seasons. 4 seasons starter, and then he sometimes plays guard when other people are injured. He's very very flexible. He's an All-American and he was team captain. He knows every position, right? He knows every position.
Yeah, he's
on the
another
O-line.
versatile offensive line guy, which I
he
think
played. Yeah, he played tackle during high school. He played tackle during high school. He played some guard and some center.
I believe
college.
they drafted him as a center.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
They did,
He can play. He can play.
Like
probably
he played
like
both, yeah.
what I say, like maybe the high end, his ceiling potential isn't there, but like on the floor, Patterson is a lot higher than I think what a lot of people are putting him at. I think he can make a big impact immediately in Houston. He also didn't allow a sack in 3 years. In the ACC, one of the toughest conferences in college football. He's very consistent and tough, and I really like how they got him in the 6th round, 6th round, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely a good player. I think the reason he was drafted in the 6th round. I don't think he's a great athlete. He doesn't really have good length.
And then that
as
limits
an
his
offensive
ceiling.
lineman.
Yeah.
Right, his limit is a ceiling. But I think his floor is really high.
And I think he struggles with facing moving defenders, which is also very important in the NFL with all the different type of stuff they try to throw at you defensively.
Yeah.
But most of the things that I think he struggles with are coachable.
Yeah.
Besides, I guess, his athleticism.
Yeah.
I think he definitely has. I agree with. I think he probably has a not too big of a high ceiling guy, but he should be able to be a solid starter if he gets to that point
Right.
when down the line.
And I mean,
agree.
once again, they did need interior offensive line, so it's good to see that they're kind of targeting that and trying to help patch that.
Yeah, they definitely were. They came into this draft knowing what they wanted.
Exactly.
And,
like,
they're
throughout the
sticking to
draft, you can see they kind of stuck to that theme.
Yeah. All right, so their next pick, they took
talk about
Xavier Hutchinson,
Yeah.
wide receiver out of Iowa State. I like this pick a lot. I really like their whole draft. But I think he runs hard. He has a good catch radius. My favorite part of his game is just how he gets over top of guys.
Yes.
Like snatch the ball from them, like over their
Yeah.
head. But yeah, he's a smart player. I think he finds holes in zones really well. He has good body control. I think I didn't think he was gonna fall to the 6th round. I do see there are some concerns, and especially I mean I don't know if you guys watched the Senior Bowl, the one-on-ones. He struggled a lot in that.
Yeah.
And he did have drop problems in his career, but I do think it was a good value pick and it adds to their wide receiver room.
He did have drop problems, but he didn't grow out of them, but he got a lot better, especially in 2022. Because in 2020 he only had 64 receptions and it was up to 167 in 2022.
Yeah.
He's really fast. He's just really good at just getting the ball. He garners a lot of receptions. Because he's good at catching balls in like contested situations.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like for a 6th round pick, it's definitely kind of what you want. Interestingly, PFF gave him the 2nd highest grade of all receivers in the draft, and he also saw the most targets of all receivers in the draft.
Yeah, I definitely think this was a steal of a pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely, like for a pick in the 6th round, definitely exactly what you would ask for. I think he could definitely be good.
Yeah, he I think he is gonna have to compete to see the field. Because I mean, drafting Tank Dell earlier, they got Dalton Schultz, Robert Woods, Nico Collins, John Mechie, all these dudes.
Forgot about Mechie.
Yeah, all these guys that he's going to be competing to
Yeah.
get playing time for. But I think when he does see the field, I do expect people will be surprised. I think he's going to be a guy in 2 or 3 years. You're going to be like, wow, he won the 6th round. But I guess we'll see about that.
So their next pick, I also really like Brandon Hill, safety out of Pittsburgh. Round 7, I was like, wow.
Pick 248.
He's mainly a slot safety, and he actually only gave up 1 touchdown in coverage in 2022. So he's locked down. He's a really locked down slot, but I feel like we need to see more versatility out of him because he's just primarily a slot corner. But yeah, do you guys want to?
I mean, yeah, I think he's definitely one of like the more in the box type safeties to help in the run game.
Yeah.
He hits hard. He's fast. He was good in man coverage. All these things. He's definitely a pretty solid player. I think obviously the reason he went later is he's not a big guy. I think there are kind of some concerns with him missing tackles because he tries to come in for the big hit and he'll just miss. But again, to add to their defense in the 7th round, he might end up being a special teams guy. That's where I think he'll probably end up. But he was definitely a solid pick.
Yeah, I mean, he ran a 4.43 40-yard in the combine, which is pretty fast. And to me, like you said, I think this was more a pick kind of looking for their special teams rather than depth.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it is safety depth, but I think also this was more for the special teams. So I think he could be a good contributor to the safety, to the special teams with his really fast speed. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
So should we just give our grade? No, should we just give our grades now for the?
Yeah, that was their whole draft.
Yeah.
We each have individual grades
Yes.
of how we think they did in the draft.
Too, by the way.
Cole, you can.
All right, so I gave a B plus. I think they had a very, very solid draft. B plus is actually very high for me in my rankings. It's like I'd say like an A is like 10 out of 10, but B plus is near good, like an 8 out of 10. But obviously phenomenal picks with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. They're going to make an impact immediately. I just think obviously Will Anderson's a very, very good player. They might have given up a little bit too much, but I still think it doesn't really matter. But that took off a little bit from me, and I don't really know what they were doing with Juice Scruggs. I was kind of confused, but they're going to have their reasons. And then just a lot of solid depth players like Nathaniel Dell and Hutchinson. I both really like them a lot. I think Brandon Hill's a very good safety as well. And just some players that may need a little bit more development, like Henry, the linebacker from Alabama. And Dylan Horton, another great pick as well. I think a B plus is solid. grade for them.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically right there. I give him an A minus, a little bit higher. To me, I was kind of surprised, but I think it was a good thing how active they were in the draft with all the trades and stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Traded up and down, especially obviously the big trade up in the first round.
Yeah.
But I thought that's exactly what they needed. This kind of organization where they've been cold the past couple of years. And obviously, I mean, in my opinion, only questionable pick, like you said, was that second round pick with Juice Scruggs. I think all the other picks were completely justifiable, and I think they made a lot of sense. And clearly they had that theme going into the draft, like we said many times before, where we have these needs, we had these struggles last year. How can we set a better foundation for our future by kind of attacking these needs and helping draft for these needs? And clearly the entire draft they did that.
Yeah.
Taking interior offensive line, taking edge players, taking a QB obviously, a couple of receivers. So you kind of see that clearly with that theme. And I think all around this was not a top heavy draft in my opinion. I think every round, except I guess for the second round, they made really good picks. So that's why I give it an A minus. In my opinion, A minus. It was a really good grade, really high grade.
Yeah, I agree. I also gave them an A minus. I think we all think they had a good draft. They filled a lot of their needs. Stroud and Will Anderson obviously addressed their biggest offensive and defensive need, which is quarterback and edge rusher. I liked a lot of their later round picks. I think Dylan Horton and Xavier Hutchinson. Those are definitely two of my favorite picks of their draft.
Yeah.
In the later rounds. Like you guys said, Drew Scruggs, especially because if you're gonna trade up, I think they should have tried to trade before JMS got drafted.
Exactly.
Like that's what we were saying earlier.
Yeah, I think there were honestly two better centers that they could have taken.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they filled a lot of holes. They definitely. I think they had a really good draft. Not many teams had a better draft than them, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, for me, B+ is really high. That's just my grading scale.
All right.
All right, Lee.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the HBTA. I want to know your guys' opinions on, for example, Juice Scruggs. Do you guys agree? Do you guys think that was a bad pick, or maybe you guys are some big Juice Scruggs fans?
Do you think trading up for
Will Anderson was enough? Do you think they gave up too much for Will Anderson? Yeah.
Or do you think maybe it'll be worth it? Who do you think's better, C.J. Stroud or Anthony Richardson? So many questions at this draft, and hope you guys enjoyed. What do you guys give the Texans a grade? So, definitely a lot to look at with this draft, and I think overall, like we said, a good draft. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope to see you guys next time. So thank you.